we've got some last-minute rumors ahead of NFL free agency concerning your Jacksonville Jaguars. Welcome into Jags Now, presented by Chat Sports. I am your host, Cullen Brown. Jeremy Fowler, who does a lot of great work for ESPN, had some rumors that he has been just hearing about, some notes that he just kind of wanted to put into an article that he released this morning, and some of them concern the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I wanted to dive into it, give you my kind of full thoughts on just, what he said, what my reaction to it is, and the latest concerning Jacksonville ahead of 2026 NFL free agency. But before we get into it, guys, this is why you subscribe, because we are at the heart of the NFL offseason. Free agency is literally right around the corner, and we've got you guys covered with news, rumors, and analysis concerning your Jacksonville Jaguars, any trades, free agency, the draft. We're going to have it covered for you here on the channel, and we want to hear from you. This is a dual kind of channel that we've got working on here, so whenever you guys see something that you like, or maybe you want me to do future videos in the future on this channel, get down below, get in the comment section. I'm always trying to make sure I respond to you guys. We're currently at just over 1,800 subscribers. We'd love to get to 2,000 by the time the NFL draft rolls around. The more subscribers we get, the more videos we're able to bring to you guys. Hit that sub button for the latest Jags news and rumors. All right, getting into the major, Jags rumor that, is kind of swirling around Jags Twitter / kind of wherever else at this current moment. Should the Jaguars trade for Eagles defensive tackle Jaylen Carter? Now, Fowler reports that the Eagles have received calls on Carter. Could the Jags be interested? And I kind of want to take you through a timeline of events just to kind of, paint the picture, if you will, in terms of how the Jaguars could be potentially interested in a guy like Jaylen Carter. First, a account that I'm going to be completely honest, I had no familiarity with 24 hours ago. Yardline Yoda tweeted this out saying the Jaguars are in active talks to acquire Eagles defensive tackle Jaylen Carter. Let's see if Gladstone can get it done. Lots of options currently being explored when it comes to pass rush. And look, this is an account that was surfacing on Jaguars Twitter. I was kind of sitting there looking at it, and I was just like, okay, you have 5,000 followers. It seems like he's somebody that may not have the most credibility, but it was something kind of just worth keeping in the back of your head. But I did want to give him credit because he did have this initial report. Because then Jeremy Fowler, when he released his article, had this to say when it came to Jaylen Carter, saying the following, saying, with defensive tackle Jordan Davis now extended, Philly also must weigh in on whether to extend Jaylen Carter, who is eligible for a new deal. I'm told Philly has received trade calls on Carter. Also, NFL insider Ricky Scoops had the note that Jaylen Carter could get traded as well. So there's a lot of buzz and rumors around Jaylen Carter, who did have a down year last season. All admittedly, he wasn't great in terms of run defense last year, but former first-round pick, does have a lot of talent from Georgia, but there was question marks, would he get along in the locker room? Obviously, the off-the-field stuff. He's never been somebody that's looked at in the highest light in terms of, okay, this could be a guy that you build your defense around. I mean, he's clearly talented, but again, the character issues are something that are a bit of concern. Well, and then now you're sitting there saying, okay, that's great in terms of Jeremy Fowler's reporting. How do the Jaguars tie into this? Well, so obviously Max Crosby got traded recently from the Baltimore Ravens, from the Las Vegas Raiders to the Baltimore Ravens. And Diana Rossini had kind of an interesting report when it came to Jacksonville. He said, obviously, this is in response to the Max Crosby obviously getting traded a couple of days ago, saying both the Baltimore Ravens and the Dallas Cowboys have been working on this for days. They kept communication with the Raiders. And then next part's interesting. The Jacksonville Jaguars were another team trying to put together a big trade package that would get it done. Ravens win. Ravens ultimately gave up 2 first-round picks in order to land Max Crosby, but according to Diana's report, the Jaguars were in on it. So that must mean, just from my kind of inferring here, James Gladstone is looking to upgrade the roster. If he was interested in Max Crosby, and again, how much were the Jaguars actually interested in Crosby, that remains to be seen, and, ultimately we may never find out how actually interested they were, but clearly Gladstone, as we know, has been willing to deal in his short tenure as GM. Well, then this Eagles kind of aggregator who's kind of got some credibility. I talked to our Eagles host, Chase Sr., about Thomas Peterson here, who, he aggregates these things in terms of, the Eagles, and he's been featured on Bleacher Report. He's been featured on other kind of publications, so he has a little bit of credibility. He said the following: the Eagles have received calls from multiple teams regarding possible trades for defensive tackle Jaylen Carter, per Jeremy Fowler. Jaguars are one of the teams reportedly in the mix. So now you're kind of seeing the picture of, okay, there's a lot of smoke and a lot of buzz. How much of it's real, how much of it's not, can be left up for debate. But Jaylen Carter is somebody that I think could get potentially traded here during the 2026 NFL offseason. And you look at his cap hits, he's still on his rookie contract. His cap hits for the next 2 years in 2026 is a very manageable cap hit of $6.9 million. And then in 2027, if a team were to accept his fifth-year option, they would have him at $27.1 million, given the amount of Pro Bowls that he's made in his career and the amount of incentives he's made. So all in all, just to kind of, put a bow on it, I do think Jaylen Carter is somebody that the Eagles are potentially looking to shop. They just extended Jordan Davis on a contract of north of $20+ million per season. They have Moro Ojomo. Do they necessarily want to pay Jaylen Carter all this money? It kind of makes sense that they're looking to shop for him. Could the Jaguars get involved? It's worth keeping an eye on. I'm not saying that it's for sure going to happen, but this has got a little smoke going around the Jacksonville Jaguars and Jaylen Carter. It's something that we'll monitor, obviously, for the next coming days, or until the Eagles either decide to keep or trade Jaylen Carter. We'll keep you updated here on the channel. But I want to turn it over to you guys. If you were James Gladstone and you had the opportunity to trade for Jaylen Carter, would you do it? Type Y for yes, type in for no. Let me know down in the comments section. I wanted to get to this other rumor that, again, it was circulating on Jags Twitter, and I've been hearing a lot of buzz. It felt like it was really driven from the fantasy football community, if I'm being completely honest. But Jonathan Jones, who does a really good job covering the NFL for CBS Sports, he tweeted this out just moments ago here on March 8th. Considering how the Jaguars' offense flourished down the stretch, it would be a surprise if Jacksonville dealt wide receiver Brian Thomas Jr. There had been speculation that they could move on from him, but the Jaguars value the 2024 first rounder. And I've said this all along. I've said it, on social media, on the show, a number of different places. I consider it highly unlikely that Brian Thomas Jr. gets traded. Liam Cohen and James Gladstone kind of emphasized that, this wide receiver room in terms of, Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, those are the three that they're kind of have plans for next season, with Travis Hunter kind of getting in some opportune snaps, with him having more of a focus at cornerback. So I never really understood why the Jaguars would consider trading for Brian Thomas Jr., unless it's the fact that, someone's willing to overpay for Brian Thomas Jr., say give up a first-round pick for the former 2024 first-rounder. So I just want to kind of put that to bed. I have no, reason or inclination to think that the Jaguars will trade Brian Thomas Jr. Did he have the greatest year last year? No, but I still don't. I think it's way too early to give up on him. I think the Jaguars have him firmly in their plans for 2026 and beyond. Okay, let's get into the rest of Jeremy Fowler's article here. And the big three that we've all kind of talked about in terms of the Jaguars free agents, they were mentioned in this article in terms of future plans. Let's start with Devin Lloyd, the linebacker, who very well could reset the market at the position here in NFL free agency. Fowler did spoke about Devin Lloyd heading into free agency and a team that could potentially land the former Utah Ute, saying this, quote, Carolina is lurking in several markets, likely seeking pass rush and linebacker help. Players such as edge rusher Adafe Owe and linebacker Devin Lloyd are considered good fits for Panthers' defensive scheme. General Manager Dan Morgan also was with Buffalo when the franchise drafted free agent linebacker Edmonds, who obviously just got released recently by the Chicago Bears. Okay, so Carolina, I kind of previously mentioned, would be a team that I would consider a possible Devin Lloyd destination. I think that there's also 9 other teams that I could see potentially trade for the second-team All-Pro linebacker. You got the Cincinnati Bengals. I think they've constantly needed defense throughout their entire tenure. Could they potentially look to make a splash with Devin Lloyd? Las Vegas Raiders, they just cleared some cap space trading Max Crosby. They'd seem like a potential option. The Los Angeles Chargers could be an option. They have kind of a sneaky bit of amount of cap space. New England Patriots have been rumored to be big spenders in free agency. Could they potentially look out for Devin Lloyd? The Giants, I know, need linebacker help. Same with the Jets. San Francisco 49ers don't have as much cap space, but maybe they could pair Devin Lloyd with Fred Warner. I mean, that would be a scary linebacker duo if that were to be the case. Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been rumored to be in the Devin Lloyd sweepstakes. We'll see what they do with Levante David. And then the Tennessee Titans have one of the bigger cap spaces in all of the NFL. Under Robert Saleh, could they potentially look to steal a Devin Lloyd? And I'm going to be flat out honest. I've kind of been beating the same drum here, but I think there's a legit chance Lloyd gets $20+ million per year in the open market. Could he get a 3 for 60, 4 for 80, maybe even higher? There's a chance he could even, top Fred Warner's $21 million per year as a linebacker if a team's desperate enough to land his services. I think he is clear cut and away the best off-ball linebacker that's available in the NFL free agent market. I could see him getting a bag, and could it be potentially Carolina? We'll see, but I have a hard time believing that he'll end up back in Jacksonville for 2026. Let's move on to Travis Etienne, the running back out of Clemson, former first-round pick himself. There seems to be at least a somewhat of a market kind of developing for Etienne. It seems like Kenneth Walker is going to be kind of the main running back that will probably lead the charge in terms of how much running backs are getting paid, with Travis Etienne being kind of the second running back that could look to get paid here in NFL free agency. Jeremy Fowler also had this, speaking about Travis Etienne, saying, Kenneth Walker seems to be the market setter as it stands, but Travis Etienne Jr. will be right there in the mix. Some teams I've talked to are setting the market ceiling at around $12 million for Etienne, which I think that's a lot. That could go up if enough teams get involved. I'm hearing Walker will consider the Giants, Commanders among options, and with the Titans as a possibility too. Etienne has the AFC West love via Denver and Kansas City. Both of these teams would check in on Walker and others too, depending on the price ranges. So a little bit of clarity in terms of where teams could be looking at for free agent running backs. And look, Etienne, we've kind of talked about it, really had his best season arguably of his career. Had over 1,100 rushing yards, almost 300 yards in receptions as well, 13 total touchdowns. I just feel like it's very unlikely that Etienne will end back up with Jacksonville. And look, we'll kind of talk about this at the back half of the show, how much cap space the Jaguars have currently. It's not a lot. And if you're Jacksonville and you're James Gladstone and you're trying to pay all these guys on your roster, do you necessarily want to pay up to $12 million for Travis Etienne? I mean, look, I think Travis Etienne's a heck of a football player, and I think he's got a lot to contribute to a winning roster and whatnot, but I just don't know if I'd pay him $12 million. And I was kind of sitting there, and people have been asking me in the comment section, all right, what contract would you give Travis Etienne in NFL free agency if you were GM? This is my best offer, final offer. I'd probably start lower, but would be the absolute max I would give Travis Etienne in free agency. 3-year deal, $27 million, about $9 million per year, with $18 million guaranteed. I think that takes him slightly over Javonte Williams, who's dealt with knee injuries in the past, and Etienne's also younger than Javonte Williams, but I just don't see a world where Travis Etienne is getting somewhere $10+ million, and it's in Jacksonville. Now, could he receive an offer, say from Denver, say from Kansas City, even New Orleans has also been rumored to be interested in Travis Etienne? Sure, and maybe that is the market, the way the running backs are going. Like Kenneth Walker gets somewhere 14 to 15 million, Travis Etienne gets 11 to 12. At that point, I kind of sit there and I say, Travis Etienne, thank you for all the memories. We're looking to move in a different direction, whether that's the draft or whether it's free agency. And these are just a couple of free agent targets that I think make sense for Jacksonville. Obviously, they have the Liam Cohen connection from his time in Tampa Bay. It's Rachaad White and Sean Tucker. Both, have their varying different skill sets. And honestly, I would take either of these guys as an RB2 paired next to a Bashal Tutin, and maybe the Jaguars do that. They simply sign a veteran like Rachaad White or Sean Tucker, pair him with Bashal Tutin, and just kind of, go into the 2026 season as that is your running back room with LaQuint Allen getting in sparing snaps, maybe 5-6 snaps a game. So these are two options I would keep in mind. There's obviously some other, Tyler Algier, Rico Dowdle, other like bigger name options that the Jaguars could target. I see that as more unlikely in my opinion, and I would see them going more the budget route at running back in my opinion. Lastly, Fowler had this to say on Montaric Brown, who, out of these three guys, I would prioritize Montaric Brown as the one that I would look to re-sign if I'm Jacksonville. Now, again, will they ultimately find a market that makes sense for both sides? We'll wait and see, but here's what Fowler had to say on Montaric Brown, saying, the Jaguars would like to re-sign cornerback Montaric Brown before free agency. If they can't, San Francisco is among the teams expected to show interest. We've also heard that Philadelphia could be interested in Montaric Brown's services, so there is going to be a market for him. I do think he's not going to go in that first round of cornerbacks that could potentially be off the board during NFL free agency, but in that kind of second tier group of guys, he is certainly a guy that could get decent money, even upwards of double digits in terms of like $10+ million per year. I would try to prioritize Montaric Brown out of these three because when you're thinking about the Jaguars' cornerback depth chart, I'd imagine that Greg Newsome's gone. I'd be highly shocked if they somehow were bringing back, even at a highly discounted rate, which I don't think Greg Newsome would sign that contract. You have Travis Hunter, who's slotted in to be your cornerback one next season. Jordan Lewis is going to play the nickel. Jarian Jones is a corner slot that they really like. We'll see what Caleb Ransall's role is. Again, we've talked about it ad nauseum, that kind of weapon X factor. Where does he fit into the secondary? Christian Braswell, they also tendered his contract, so he's going to be in play. But outside of that, they don't have a lot of options at that outside cornerback position, whereas I think Montaric Brown could really be somebody that gives the Jaguars stability at that position where they're not forced to go into the draft having to, reach on a cornerback earlier than they want to. So we'll see kind of ultimately where the Jaguars decide to go during free agency if they do bring any one of these three back, but it's going to be a very interesting scene to see where all three of these guys end up. And I want you guys to pick one. Not necessarily the one that you would want to re-sign, because I think obviously Devin Lloyd out of these three would probably get a lot of the votes. Travis Etienne. I want you to pick one in terms of who do you think the Jaguars are going to re-sign. If you think it's going to be Devin Lloyd, type DL. If you think it's going to be Travis Etienne, type TE. If you think it's going to be Montaric Brown, type MB. Let me know. I think ultimately, if I had to pick one of these three, it would be Montaric Brown. But there is a world where all three of these guys go during NFL free agency. Just some Jaguars cap news before we get out of here, just that I wanted to touch on that have happened over the last couple days. Jordan Lewis, Patrick McCarry, and Eric Murray all had their contracts restructured ahead of the 2026 NFL season, which did get the Jaguars cap compliant. And this is one of the things that really frustrates me in terms of trying to understand the cap situation. Spotrac and Over the Cap are two really reliable websites that you can trust in terms of salary cap and how things work if a guy were to get traded, or different restructures, contract extensions if they were to cut post June 1st, after June 1st, or pre June 1st, excuse me. They, for whatever reason, can never have the Jaguars in terms of their cap space leveled down evenly. Currently, Spotrac has the Jaguars $6.8 million of cap space, whereas Over the Cap has them at just over $110,000. I'm going to be honest, I did some research, couldn't really find any differences between the two, so the Jaguars are somewhere in this mix. They are cap compliant as currently filming here on, March 8th, 2:11 Central Time, but we'll see. They've still got other moves that they need to make if they hope to re-sign one of those three guys that I mentioned, or maybe some other free agents like Dennis Gardeck, Tim Patrick, this, that, or the other. But we'll see what other moves James Gladstone has up his sleeve, and we're going to have you covered throughout NFL free agency. And guys, this is going to be the end of the video. Thank you so much for tuning in, and if you made it to the end of the video, you already know what time it is. It's time for a little Duval roll call. If you made it to the end of the video, I need you to get down below in that comment section and spam Duval down below. And thank you guys so much for subscribing. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. Can we get there before the NFL draft? I greatly appreciate it. And until the next one, Jags fans, we'll see you on the next one.